Now, our conversation for the rest of the show is going to be on the tourism and hospitality sector, how the sector has fared in the last 1 year and expectations for 2015. I'm being joined on the program by the Ambassador, Tourism for Africa, and a special advisor to the Ondo State Governor on Tourism, Wale Akimboboye. Mr. Akimboboye, good morning, and thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, how would you describe the tourism and hospitality sector in 2014? Was it an interesting year for the industry?
It's quite interesting, because basically with all the challenges we had last year, with the Boko Haram, with all the security issues we had in the country last year, it was quite difficult, extremely difficult. But if you look at the domestic tourism movement, you realize that there was still a lot of movement. An area of business tourism, there's still a lot of movement. The area of religious tourism, a lot of movement. So I think to a large extent, security issues are really non-issues in tourism because people have come to accept the fact that it's not basically going to be about security alone. They know that there's nowhere in the world that is secure today. So they do travel domestically. I think the NTDC has a very good plan to focus on domestic tourism. 62% of American tourism intake is domestic tourism. South African tourism thrive on domestic tourism. So I think that we must begin first with domestic tourism, develop it, encourage people to travel, not only to visit relatives, like go to visit your relatives in the village. Nigerians must learn to get up and go to Ekpe, for example, and spend the weekend. They must be encouraged to do that.
Yeah, but then looking at some of the challenges that I know that the hospitality sector suffered last year was when the Ebola virus disease actually, came into the country. I know that was one sector that actually got more than its fair share of issues. But how was it handled?
Well, I think it wasn't just a Nigerian problem. It was the entire West African problem. The Ebola issue, I think, is a non-issue because it was just for like about a month and a half, we were able to contain it. So I really would not want to look at Ebola as an issue.
Yeah, but then,
it's a part of it.
Yeah,
it's a backlash. Yeah, I agree with you totally. But I think generally issues will come up. I think what we need to do is look at how we can prepare for such issues, security issues, health issues. As a matter of fact, you need to understand that there is medical tourism that we're very big at in Ondo. For example, if you have health issues, it's actually a tourism endeavor. People travel for health. So that also, it really is not not part of it. It's a major part of it. When people travel from point A to point B locally, that's called domestic health tourism.
So that means the industry actually met expectations of operators?
To a large extent, there was a lot of inflow, outflow on health issues. Domestically, a lot of people travel around quite a bit during that Ebola crisis. As a matter of fact, I think that a lot of government agencies and state had to quickly set up Ebola hospitals that provided some level of comfort for people that they know they can go to in case they're infected. So that helped with, that for me is part of tourism. Health tourism is a major part of tourism. They call it medical tourism.
So there was still a high number of tourists, because it was, a lot of people felt it was a peculiar year for that industry, having to deal with the health issues, then of course dealing with security issues as well. Some hoteliers complained that there was a drop, of visitors, a drop in the number of visitors, to their hotels because they still felt unsafe at the time. So looking in terms of how the industry is supposed to have, being like a revenue generating aspect for the economy, there was a drop. Or wasn't there a drop?
Oh, yeah, there was a drop. But what I'm saying is that the drop was not really significant per se, because it wasn't protracted. It was not for too long. It didn't go on for so long. It went on for just about a month and a half. And we have to really define tourism for us to really understand what we're talking about. There's health tourism, there's educational tourism, there's religious tourism, there's business tourism. So if you have a business hotel or you have a resort and you get recreational tourists that come to your resort, and if they don't come during Ebola, that does not mean that tourism has stopped.
But it just reduces the amount of people that you find
that goes
coming
to that particular
Yes.
tourism site. So if I own a hotel that entertain a lot of business people, and most business people cancel their trip because of Ebola, then yes, it has affected business tourism. But health tourism might be enhanced. Doctors were moving around, that's tourism. Nurses were moving around, people were traveling around, that is tourism. So we have to really understand, people get a bit personal with it, and they look at their sector. And when it affects their sector, they're not looking at the other side, other aspects of tourism. If you look at what happened recently with the synagogue, where that generate tremendous amounts of revenue from religious tourism. People come from South Africa, come from different parts of the world to worship at the synagogue. When we had that incident, it affected religious tourism, but it has absolutely no bearing on business tourism. So we have to understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, you talked about domestic tourism. Was there a stronger participation from domestic players in the industry? Because that's one of the things that the Nigerian Tourism Development Company is actually working to ensure that we see more of. So did we see a lot of that in 2014?
I think the campaign is really just starting. I think tail end of last year, federal government decided that nobody should travel for business retreats outside of the country. We Nigerians spend approximately, just on visa fees alone, $100 million every year to Dubai, just on visa fees alone. We've not talked about hotel accommodation, we've not talked about shopping, we've not talked about recreation.
Or even transport
just
within the town.
Exactly, just to, of course, movement within the town. But we're talking about, that's a humongous amount of money just to acquire a visa for holidays. Now, so it was telling of last year that directive came from federal government that before you travel, you need to look inwards to do your retreats. And as a matter of fact, if we want to really develop domestic tourism, we should cancel it for a while, for a year, for 2 years, and encourage people to go to Budukatu Ranch, to go to Ondo, Ikogusi, Warm Springs, to go to different parts and enjoy what we have there and develop these areas for domestic tourism.
But then you said, sorry to cut you here, one of the reasons why, most of these people argue that they go outside of the country to do their retreats is
apart from Estacotes?
Apart from Estacotes, is the fact that they do not have the same kind of warmth they would receive outside here.
Then you develop the warmth. If you need the bonfire, give them a bonfire. No, but just being funny. But whatever has, if you, there must be a concerted effort. If you see what's going on in agriculture today, there's a concerted effort to develop that sector. There's a lot that's been done in that sector.
But how much
that's
training?
What we have to do.